Hi math students, this video is going to be an introduction on what we are going to see in our lesson about proportions. And the focus of this is really how you solve proportions. So because the lesson is on proportions, what is a proportion? Well, a proportion is just an equation with two equal fractions. And I said the word fraction here, but we can also think of ratios. For example, we have learned that fractions like 2/3 and 4/6, those are equal fractions, or ratios like 2:3 and 4:6 are equivalent ratios. If I have an equation like this, where it says 2/3 equals 4/6, I can use that word proportion, and I can say that these are proportional. When we talk about solving proportions, that means that instead of having all four of those numbers, something is missing, like this equation right here that says x divided by 8 equals 3 divided by 4. The idea of solving proportions is if you have a fraction equal to another fraction, anything that looks like this, we can use something called cross multiply to help us solve. If you cross multiply, that means you multiply the things across from each other. So it means in one of my steps, I'm going to be multiplying x and 8. I fixed it. So we have to multiply x by 4 together, and I also have to multiply 8 times 3 together. It doesn't matter what you do first. So for example, I could say x times 4 is 4x, 8 times 3 is 24, and then it's an equation, so those two amounts are equal to each other. This right here, what we did with that x, is what we call cross multiply. And you can do this anytime you have an equation where you have a fraction equal to a fraction. We love cross multiplying because by cross multiplying you get rid of both fractions, and now I have a really easy one-step equation to solve. To finish solving this, I need to cancel out my 4 to get x by itself. I know 4x means 4 times x, so I do the opposite, which is divide. I divide both sides by 4, and if I do that, 4 divided by 4 is 1, and 1x is just the same thing as x. And then on my other side, 24 divided by 4 is 6. And just like that, I have the answer. The same as all of our equations, we can check this. We are figuring out what that missing number is in our equation. So when we solve this equation, we are trying to figure out what number over 8 is the same thing as 3/4. And we have figured out that number is the number 6. And this is true. If you simplify that fraction 6/8, it does equal 3/4. When we solve proportions, you can solve small proportions like this or bigger proportions like this one here. The idea is still the same. I have a fraction equal to a fraction, so I can cross multiply to help myself solve this equation. When you cross multiply, that means we need to multiply y plus 2 times 3. And we also need to multiply 8 minus y times 1. The difference here is there's more I have to multiply. I said I need to multiply 3 by y plus 2. Because there are two terms here, there are two things, when we do that multiplication, we want to make sure you're multiplying 3 by everything. And so if you write out that multiplication problem, it looks like this. What it means is when we do that multiplication, you want to do 3 times y, that's 3y, but you also want to do 3 times 2, and that is a positive 6. The same thing on the other side. I'm multiplying 1 by everything, and so when you do that, it's a little easier because it's 1. It's going to be 8 minus y. And just like on this other side, we would have that equal sign between our two multiplication problems. The only difference here is after I cross multiply, I have a much more complicated equation. Over here it was just a one-step equation, but here there's more things I need to do, but this is where what we've learned earlier in this unit is helpful. I see I have variables on both sides, and remember we want our variable only on one side. And so to do that, I can cancel 3y. I could subtract 3y on both sides, but for me, I would prefer to get rid of the minus y with plus y. So I'm going to do that. If I do that, that gives me 4y now, plus 6 equals 8. Now it's a two-step equation, so my next step, get rid of my constant. That's my plus 6. I do the opposite. I subtract 6. And so that gives me 4y equals 2. And then for my final step, I need y by itself, which means I need to get rid of 4. This is multiplying by 4, so I do the opposite. I divide by 4. And we get my final answer is y equals 2/4. And 2/4, if I simplify, is the same as the fraction 1/2. So my final answer is y equals 1/2. In our lesson today, we're going to see more problems like this. We're also going to see stories that go with proportions like this. This is just an introduction video though, so you can see what type of problems we're going to look at in class today. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great rest of your day.